host for this Genesis and Enoch edition. Zen Garcia, are you there, sir?
I am, brother. How are you this evening?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Yeah, it's been a pretty busy week for me, but
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, what you been up to?
Just trying to get the whole thing for the Take on the World, and then I've got the two for, the End Times Mystery Reveal conference as well. So working on 3 presentations in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, dude. They gave me just pretty much open freedom to do whatever I wanted,
Nice.
for streaming.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, I'm going to do a big summary of like everything I've done in 10 years.
Nice.
So it's like
12
it's
hours.
Yeah, it's pretty close. Well, let me see. I did part 1 yesterday. That was 2 hours. Part 2 today is looking a little over 3. I'm trying to hack it down. And the part 3 and 4, I'm doing 4 presentations.
Wow.
Are probably each going to come in somewhere in the 2-hour ballpark, I think. So, and then what I'm going to do is kind of pull what I think is appropriate for your conference out of that somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think I have 2 1-hour sessions, I think, at yours.
Yeah. That should be easy enough.
Yeah, I should be able to, because I'm recording these, because it's all pre-recorded stuff.
Right.
So I know exactly how long the presentation will take,
Mm-hmm.
as long as I don't go any rabbit trails babbling, I'm
right.
too prone to do. But yeah, it's kind of exciting. It's stuff I've certainly talked about before because it's a, like I said, it's more or less a cliff notes of everything I've done in the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back at a lot of that material, I mean, most of it I still believe the same way, but I can see how, there's still also a fair amount of things that I've evolved in my understanding of things and even changed my views on some things. So it's been interesting. Kind of enjoyable, but time consuming. Man, it just takes so much time.
Yes, definitely. And that is great also, as far as being able to see the evolution of your thought and understanding. And it's good that you're not also rigid and completely set, and unwilling to listen to new possibility, because we're all, still learning, and nobody knows everything. So, and that's why these kind of conferences are good for doing exactly that, is opening you to what other people are working on and things that they are looking into and the topics of interest. And so it's really exciting. 40 speakers and so many presentations. That's going to be pretty amazing, I think.
Yeah, I think they're, if I understand it right, they're streaming it on Robbie Davidson's Celebrate Truth channel. And it's a 4-day event, I believe. So, I was like, geez, at the rate I'm going, I could take up the whole 4 days just
right.
But I guess people can choose what they want. I'm not sure how Robbie's how he's doing it. I guess he's probably gonna do like a live stream and maybe do a playlist or something.
Yeah, he's got the 24-hour channel too. So
yeah. Well, and that's the good thing about it too, is because it is streaming and it's pretty much on demand. That if you don't want to sit through my 3-hour presentation, that's fine. Go listen to somebody else's.
Right. I think probably a lot of people will listen to try to catch everybody's, or at least as much as they can, or at least the things that are of interest to them anyways.
Yeah. Yep. So I was looking at where we left off last week. We got on some rabbit trails about health and eating and
right.
Were you able to check out that link at all?
I did. I looked at it. I haven't ordered anything yet, but yeah, it all looks really good to me.
And, yeah, we're happy.
They offer a lot too. I mean, I was really surprised.
Yeah, there's pretty much something there for everybody, I think. It's I think the website's trifectanutrition.com, I believe is the website for people that are interested in looking into it. But we left off. We had done Jubilees chapter 6, So my thought maybe is we could read Genesis 9 and maybe switch over to Jubilee 7.
All right. I've got that pulled up, and I can also pull up the Targum for chapter 9 as well.
Okay. So, yeah, if you want to do the Targum then, I can do King James.
All right.
Genesis 9. So why don't we do that? Let me switch over here. Okie dokie. Oops. Hang on a second. All right. Genesis 9. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth upon the earth, and upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand are they delivered. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things. But flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall ye not eat. And surely your blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every beast will I require it. And at the hand of man, at the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for the image of God made he man. And you, be fruitful and multiply, bring forth abundantly in the earth, and multiply therein. And God spake unto Noah and to his sons with him, saying, And I, behold, I establish my covenant with you, and with your seed after you, and every living creature that is with you, of the fowl of the cattle, and of every beast of the earth with you, from all that go out of the ark to every beast of the earth. And I will establish my covenant with you. Neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood, neither shall there any more be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, This is the token of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass, when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. And I'll remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the water shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it, and that I may remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon earth. And God said unto Noah, This is the token of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is upon the earth. And the sons of Noah went forth of the ark, were Shem and Ham and Japheth, and Ham is the father of Canaan. These are the three sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. And Noah began to be an husbandman, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And Noah lived after the flood 350 years. And all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died.
All right, chapter 9 from the Aramaic Targum. And the Lord blessed Noah and his sons, and said to them, Spread forth and multiply and replenish the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and on every fowl of the heavens. Of all the earth swimmeth forth, and all the fishes of the sea into your hand are they delivered. Every moving thing which liveth to you shall be for food. As the green herb have I given to you the whole. But flesh which is torn of the living beast, what time the life is in it, or that torn from a slaughtered animal, before all the breath has gone forth, you shall not eat. But the blood of your lives I will require of every animal which hath killed a man. I will require that it be put to death on his account. And from the hand of the human being, from the hand of the man who hath shed the blood of his brother, will I require the life of a man. Whoso sheddeth the blood of a man, the judges by witnesses shall condemn him unto death. But he who sheddeth it without witnesses, the Lord of the world will bring punishment on him in the day of the great judgment. Because in the image of the Lord he made man, and you spread yourselves abroad and multiply, bring forth in the earth and increase in it. And the Lord spake to Noah and to his sons with him, saying, behold, I establish my covenant with you, and with your children after you, and with every living soul that is with you, of birds and of cattle, and of every beast of the earth that is with you, of all that go forth from the ark, of every beast of the earth. And I will establish my covenant with you, and I will not again cause all flesh to perish by the waters of a flood, and there shall not again be a flood to destroy the earth. And the Lord said, This is the sign of the covenant which I established between my word and between you and every living soul that is with you unto the generations of the world. I have set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of the covenant between my word and the earth. And it shall be that when I spread forth my glorious cloud over the earth, the bow shall be seen in the daytime, while the sun is not sunk or hidden in a cloud. And I will remember my covenant, which is between my word and between you and every living soul of all flesh, that there shall not be the waters of a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it to remember the everlasting covenant between the word of the Lord and every living soul of all flesh that is upon the earth. And the Lord said to Noah, This is the sign of the covenant that I have covenanted between my word and between the word for all flesh that is upon the earth. And the sons of Noah who went forth from the ark were Shem, Ham, Japheth, and Shem is the father of Canaan. These are the three sons of Noah, and from them they were spread abroad to dwell in the earth. And Noah began to be a man working in the earth, Jerusalem. And Noah began to be a righteous man, and he planted a vineyard. And he found a vine which the river had brought away from the Garden of Eden, and he planted it in a vineyard, and it flourished in a day. And its grapes became ripe, and he pressed them out. And he drank of the wine, and was drunken, and he made himself naked in the midst of his tent. And Shem, the father of Canaan, beheld the nakedness of his father, and showed to his brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a mantle and bare it upon the shoulders of each, and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were turned back, and the nakedness of their father they did not behold. And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew by the relation of a dream what had been done to him by Shem, his son, who was inferior in worth on the account that he had not begotten a fourth son. And he said, Accursed is Canaan, who is his fourth son. A serving servant shall he be to his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, whose work is righteous, and therefore shall Canaan be servant unto him. The Lord shall beautify the borders of Japheth, and his sons shall be proselytized, and dwell in the schools of Shem, and Canaan shall be a servant to them. And Noah lived after the deluge 350 years, and all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died.
So I'm assuming that the way that's written, it's Ham, but it's just the way it's spelled.
Yeah, Cham. Yeah.
Yeah, it sound like you're saying Shem, but I'm sure it's like my Ham or something like that.
Yeah, Ham. Yeah, or I can't do the C, yeah. But yeah.
The guttural spit on everybody.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is.
I mean, it's interesting hearing it. I mean, I've read it many times, certainly, but hearing it, I mean, I know that the phrase "the nakedness of the father" is a reference to the mother, or in other words, the wife of the father. But listening to it, it doesn't sound that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Without the interpretation in Leviticus, one, which, even myself, before I had learned, I thought that there was possibly even some kind of, homosexual relation going on here. But I don't see it that way anymore. I interpret it differently, and that's because of the Leviticus 18:8, and there's also another passage, like 23 or something of that nature, that confirms, and so there's two witnesses that it is in relation to the wife as far as the nakedness.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a phrase that we see in the book of Leviticus as a reference to the wife of Noah. And I'm actually, I was just doing that part of my presentation today. As a matter of fact, the presentation I was working on today was dealing with the pre-flood return of the Nephilim, the post-flood return of the Nephilim, the Tower of Babel, that whole time frame. So it's like I'm going over this all over again here, for this show. Let's see, we got about 9 minutes before the break. I'm going to read Jubilees 7, I think, when we get back from the break then.
All right.
So, but what you just read, I don't know if it was from Jerusalem or which one it was, but it said that Canaan was his fourth son?
Yeah, that's what it says as far as Ham, yeah. Canaan was his fourth son.
That's really interesting. Because, in the Genesis account, we certainly don't get any evidence of any other offspring being around. Let me put that back up on the screen here.
Yeah, that is interesting.
I mean, in the Genesis account alone, all we get is Noah and his 3 sons. No mention of his wife or the sons' wives or anything else. And then all of a sudden this cursed be Canaan deal.
Right.
And just to be clear for everybody out there, there's, people are crazy. But there's, people out there saying that I have said that Ham is cursed. I have never, ever said that. Ham's not cursed. They misinterpret what I'm saying when I talk about that the post-flood Nephilim trace back to offspring of Ham. But I never said Ham was cursed. Canaan's cursed.
Canaan's cursed, yes.
Clearly Canaan's cursed.
Right.
But
actually, Ham is blessed because God blesses Noah and the 3 sons.
That's right. Yeah. So Ham participates in the same blessing as his other brothers,
right?
Shem and Japheth. And he had 4 children. And it's interesting that refers to him as the youngest, Canaan being the youngest. We also have Mitzrayim put in Cush there. But I would have always imagined Canaan to be first, that he was the firstborn, the oldest of all 3 sons.
Right.
So it'll give me something to drill in. I'm going to, we'll see what the Jubilees has to say if it unpacks it more.
Right.
Maybe even look over in Joshua and see if Joshua gives us any more on that too.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so
I'll pull up something else to see.
Okay. One thing I do want to point out, because I can, is the smoking gun that obliterates the multiple incursion thesis, which is Genesis 9:18 and 19. It says, "And the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth, and Ham is the father of Canaan. The Canaanites are the ones that the Israelites were repeatedly told to utterly destroy. Kill the women.
Yes.
Yeah, everybody. Women, children, animals, everything. Take out everybody." And so, if we wanted to know where the Canaanites came from, it's telling you right here. Ham is the father of Canaan. And then if you're really missing the point, the next verse said, these are the three sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread or populated. That's pretty definitive right there.
Right.
Let me see if I can share something else here. I did. What's that deal with that? Hang on a second. I've created a timeline chart called the 350 post-flood years of Noah's life. And hang on just a second for those on YouTube here. And when, of course, I love to lay things out as timelines because it helps me, especially put things in chronological order and see where everything fits, And looking at the offspring of Noah, this is 350 post-flood years of Noah's life. Shem, Arphaxad, and actually in Jubilee 7, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's 7, where they bring in Canaan. It's either 7 or 8, I think. Maybe even 10, when they bring in another character that's not listed in the King James genealogy.
Right.
But when I was, and that may shift things a little bit here, but just going by the King James chronology of who begat who at what age, Peleg shows up just over 100 years after the flood. And the name Peleg means to split or divide as if by a canal of water. And his brother Joktan, that name means to be made small from something bigger. So many people, and myself included, have assumed that the division of Peleg was the same as the division at the Tower of Babel. And that not only was the languages divided at the Tower of Babel, but the assumption was that the earth was itself, that Pangea, whatever shape you subscribe to of the earth, that Pangea broke up at that same time. But when I laid this out as a timeline chart, I found that that's not the case, that the Tower of Babel is, it's way down the end of this timeline chart. It's close to the end, to the time of Noah's death, actually. Within probably 50 years or so of Noah. Because Nimrod's born in 1908, which is about 300 years after 250 years after the flood. So the Peleg event, his name means to divide or split, and it has to do with water. And Joktan means to be made small from something bigger. So, I mean, the point that I'm making is that we see in the Bible, people name their children because of things that they saw or experienced. Esau comes out red and hairy, so they name him Red and Hairy. Jacob comes out holding his heel, so they name him Heel Grabber.
Right.
Jacob. So, clearly something happened during the time that these kids were born that caused their parents to name them that.
Right.
So we have the Pangea event split up happening about 100 years after the flood, and about, 50 to about 300 years after the flood, about 100 years later, or 200 years later, is the Tower of Babel. Which makes sense, too, because if the Tower of Babel was at the same time as the Peleg event, Joshua said there were 600,000 men working on the Tower of Babel project. I can't see how you could get 600,000 men from 3 families,
right? Yeah,
in 100 years,
right?
And it would still be pressing it to in 3.
That's a lot of breeding.
That's a lot. People are really getting jiggy with it here.
Yeah, right.
But people are, Shem lived 600 years, or Arphaxad 430 years. So when you consider the lifespan that these people had and the propensity to have more than one wife, it's conceivable pardon the pun, that we could have this much offspring. And also got into an interesting debate with somebody on Facebook, because they rejected Joshua because it said that Rebecca, Isaac's wife, was 10 years old. And they're like, I don't accept that, Isaac was a pedophile. And I said, well, I could appreciate the sentiment. I understand that. But we can't judge biblical times by modern standards, you know. And I started looking up, you know, how young, what's the youngest a female human can get pregnant. And so I was actually surprised that women, the time of getting your first period can be anywhere from as young as 10 years old to, you know, in the early teens. And so it was not uncommon for people to get married at 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, way back then. Even in Americas. I want to say it was either my grandmother or somebody. It was either my grandmother or great grandmother, I think, got married at 14.
Yeah, they left the Holy Temple when they were the age of 14, and they started, you know, the virgins, like even the story of Mary.
Yes,
that's when Joseph was appointed her guardian.
Truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures. Everyday questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses,
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible?
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world. Sacred Word Revealed
comes to Atlanta, Georgia
On September 11th to the 13th, 2020.
Purpose to reveal end-time mysteries.
To prepare the final generation,
we must don the full armor of God.
Featuring Zen Garcia,
Dr. Joy Pugh,
Rob Skiba,
Gary Wayne,
Yana Ben Noon,
Stephen Benoon,
Dr. Stephen Pigeon,
Justin Garcia,
Laurel Austin,
Nathan Reynolds. Buy your tickets now at sacredwordrevealed.com.
And we're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I'm your host, Rob Skiba, and we're continuing our discussion of the book of Genesis and supporting Hebrew texts that go along with it. Not sure where I was going with that. There was something we were talking about. I was talking about ages and stuff, and Joshua. This person was saying that they couldn't accept Joshua because they couldn't accept that Rebecca could have been 10 years old. And I'm like, well, while I can appreciate that, especially in this day and age where we're, having all about pedophilia and everything like that. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that being said, it's a mistake to judge ancient literature by 21st century Western American standards. Mm-hmm. And it got pretty heated. I'm like, look, I'm not trying to say I endorse pedophilia, and I wouldn't want to have anything to do with a 10-year-old myself.
No,
but
not at all.
I'm just saying that when you go back and look in the ancient world, and even the not so ancient world, and in fact, I was, as a missionary, having traveled the world, been to over a dozen countries, there are still places, even to this day, that will take a bride at, 12, 13 years of age, because they consider the girl to be a woman if she's capable of conceiving.
Bearing children, yes. So
if she's starting to have a period, at whatever age that is, then in many, many cultures, that's considered wife time.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start having babies. So, when I think of the time period, even if it's 300 years ish, and people are living 600 years of age, Shem, our fact said 438, Selah 433. I mean, so most of these people, up to the time of Abraham living to about 200, and having multiple wives and wives as young as, preteen even, then you could say, well, yeah, I mean, I could see how there could be a whole lot of babies being produced, throughout that time. And boy, people were just going off. I mean, I'm like, yeah, you want your head to really explode? Go look up how young Mary was. Mm-hmm. I mean, because, I've read plenty of stuff that would place her in the 12 to 13, 14, 15 range, which by our standards would be, totally off the charts, not cool.
Yeah, too young, right?
I mean, again, we can't judge ancient literature and ancient cultures by Western 21st century American standards. And, I remember when I was growing up, of course, when you're growing up, you always want to do what you can't do, what you're not supposed to do, right? You're not supposed to drink. Well, what do you want to do? You want to drink, right? So, although I didn't really touch any alcohol until I was in my mid-20s, I think. And even then, I didn't really care for it. But, I always found it interesting that, okay, I could drive a car at 16. I could actually get an airplane license at 16. I could get a car license at 16. I could join the military and lay down my life for my country at 18, but I can't drink a beer until I'm 21.
Right.
You know what I mean? That was always like, what? So, I mean, to dismiss the book, circling back around, to dismiss the book because you can't accept that, Rebecca was 10 years old. I mean, you're totally applying Western 21st century American thinking onto ancient culture and ancient texts, and that's just not the way scholarship is done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I fully agree. And then, just for that, but you don't even know, as far as the interpretation and so what was the context of the passage? He says, does it say that, it says that Isaac married Rebecca when she was 10?
Well, what was interesting, Zach Bauer had posted we talked about it briefly, I think, in last week's show, a passage, I believe it was from 2nd Esdras, talking about what happens to you after you die. Mm-hmm. And right. I don't know if there was a reference in there. Somewhere there was a reference, I guess, to Joshua, and that's what spun up the conversation. It was on his Facebook page that this was happening. And I'm like, look, I mean, I can't see how you can judge it based on that. I mean, that's not how scholarship works.
Mm-hmm. But, I just want to see the passages before, the full context.
Yeah, I don't know where they got that from, because I mean, again, Zach posted something from 2nd Esdras, so where he was pulling Joshua out of that, I don't recall. I don't recall a reference to Joshua and Esdras, so I don't know where that. It seemed like it came out of the blue,
Yeah.
But I do seem to remember reading that in Joshua a long time ago when I was reading through the book that she was really young.
Yeah. Well, maybe when we get to that part,
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
3 years from now when we get to that chapter.
Right.
Something else that was interesting, though, speaking of Second Esdras, is putting together my presentation, and I'm trying to draw okay, the end has been declared from the beginning. So if we want to understand the end times, we got to go back to the beginning times, which is what we're doing here,
Yes.
and looking at what happened, the events of the Torah, and even into the Old Testament things that happened, and for me, the entire story narrative, the foundation for the entire biblical narrative, really is in the first 12 chapters of Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just completely loaded with everything. And when we get to the issue of the Nephilim and hybrids and animal-human hybridization as well, all of that was clearly taking place back in these biblical times, and how they're happening in our days. And I came across a reference, I forget the address, but it's in Second Esdras, that talks about, in an end times context, that pregnant women will give birth to monsters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that also in the Cave of Treasures and the Book of the Bee.
Oh, yeah, it mentions the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it was happening. There's let me see if I can pull it up for the viewers here. Yeah, I can. Hang on a second. That's 53. There's a Shalmaneser is a character in the Bible that's mentioned. Let me switch this over. I got another timeline chart called the Nimrod Abraham timeline chart, and in that one, I'm really showing Nimrod's born in 1908 a.m. and Abram is born in 1948 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
So he's born.
Interesting number there.
I know, very interesting number. And they become these mega rivals throughout the book of Joshua. I mean, it's like 200 pages or something like that of the life between these two people.
Right.
But I was looking through the who begat who. We see in this passage of Genesis that Ham is the father of Canaan, and when we turn the page to chapter 10, we see the Canaanites in Genesis 10:6 through 20 in the so-called Table of Nations, and one of his offspring is Het, and he's the father of the Hittites. And so as I'm going down the timeline, and I see that when Sarah dies, Abraham is negotiating with a guy named Ephron of the Hittites.
Right.
And,
yeah.
I'd already done, when I was doing research on chimera and ancient animal-human hybridization and stuff like that. I mean, it's all over. It's everywhere. I mean, the further back you go, the more you see it. Carvings and hieroglyphs and things of that nature. And I had seen some ancient Hittite carvings that show characters that have like human body with it looks like a tiger head, tiger head or cat head of some sort, and a human body. And in the middle, so there's one on either side of two other characters. In the middle, you have two satyrs, people with human upper torso and lower body of like a goat.
Goat, right.
And so I'm finding and there's a bunch. All you need to do is do a Google search for animal-human hybrid Hittite. You can just have fun. And so I'm looking at this particular carving, and I'm realizing, okay, wait a minute. Abraham is negotiating with Ephron of the Hittites for a burial plot for Sarah. So in my timeline chart, I have Genesis 23:10 through 20. We read that Abraham bought a piece of land. He bought a piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver for a burial plot for Sarah. He negotiated with Ephron of the Hittites for it. The Hittites were Nephilim. They're part of the tribes that are consistently slated for utter destruction. And their name means the terrors, and Ephron's name means fawn-like. So
yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, considering the chimeric nature of the Hittite carvings, could it be, I'm just asking the question, could it be that Abraham was negotiating with a satyr?
Right.
Now, this seems completely outlandish to us, but if it was as common as it appears to be back then, animal-human hybridization, right or wrong, people were aware of them, And
Right.
later in Joshua, we see that this character, I think his name was Zepho, he's out looking around
Right.
his donkey or something that got away from him, and he hears a weird sound, goes into a cave, and it says he described this being from the waist up like a human and the waist down like a goat. And he kills it and, rescues his animal.
Right.
It's just written very matter of fact. Yeah, killed a satyr,
Right.
And I mentioned the Shalmaneser III. 2 Kings 17:3 mentions that this king Shalmaneser III. Well, if you do a Google search for black obelisk of Shalmaneser III, it's got some very interesting engraving on it. And in one place in particular, it shows what appears to be a full-grown elephant, judging by the length of its tusk. If that's a full-grown elephant, then right behind this elephant is a lion man. It's the body of a lion, looks with the head of a man. And what's even more interesting is it's on a leash, walking in front of a really tall dude. If that's a full-grown elephant in front of them, then the dude walking his pet lion man is, probably 15, 18 feet tall, at least 12 feet tall, probably. And so we have the lion men of Moab also mentioned in 2 Samuel 23:20. So I'm like,
Right.
look, guys, we got to rethink like the ancient world, because, we think because of evolutionary teaching, we are taught to believe that we're at the pinnacle. And the further back you go, the more primitive they were. No, that's not what we see in the ancient world.
Right.
The further back we go, the more amazing it was, the more intense it was.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think we're actually kind of going backward from those times and
Playing catch up at best.
Yeah, absolutely. And with regard to the lion men of Moab, I was just writing about in this pre-Adamite book about that same theme, because there is a mention in a book called As It Comes to Pass, which is a book on the tales of King David and Solomon, and there's a really in-depth story in that particular book that talks about the lion men of Moab, and it brings out all the details of them. And I can maybe after the next break or something, I can share that with you. And there's also very interesting in that Maccabees chapter 4, when they were the martyrdom of the high priest Eleazar and his 7 sons, that it mentions in there that it is the lion men of Moab that are doing the torture for Antiochus Epiphanes IV. And in this story, the Moabite king, he disbands the lion men of Moab as his, almost sort of like special forces. They were King's Guard. Let me actually see if I can find it. But it's a very, very interesting tale, and it's something that not a lot of people are familiar with or know about. And it's kind of short, but if you want to hear it, I can share it with you.
Yeah, sure. Do you need to look it up, or because I can talk?
Yeah, go ahead and talk for a little bit, and I'll find it, and then.
Okay. So I started to. I was talking about my 350 post-flood years of Noah's life. If people are interested in these charts, by the way, they're available on my website, BabylonRisingBooks.com. If you go to BabylonRisingBooks.com, click on the store link, and then click on the digital products. You can download the digital files that way. BabylonRisingBooks.com. So, yeah, you have the Peleg deal about 100 years after the flood. Giants are there like immediately. I mean, they're already out and about doing their thing, quite early on. And there's always the question of how did the Nephilim return after the flood? And I'm like, look, the same person, Moses, the same guy who wrote Genesis 6 and also after that of Genesis 6, that same guy also wrote Genesis 9, 18 and 19, which I just read. And, it clearly says that that Ham is the father of Canaan there.
Mhm.
Let me open this up a little bit better. And so he fathered the Canaanites. These are the three sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. The whole world was populated. And now Moses is writing this a good 800 plus years after the flood, right? Because the Exodus and all that happened about 800 years after the flood. So from a vantage point of close to 1,000 years after the flood, he's saying that the whole earth was populated by these people here. No mention of angels anywhere.
Right.
So yeah. Anyway, that's what I just wanted to bring out.
All right, cool. Well, I've got it here, and for those people that don't know what we're talking about, in Samuel chapter 23, verse 20, it says, "And Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, the son of a valiant man of Kabzeel, who had done many acts, he slew 2 lion-like men of Moab. He went down also and slew a lion in the midst of a pit in the snow." Well, this story gives greater detail on that whole event, and it says this: "So the king's son and the pride of his army and the glory of his hosts, Ariel of Moab, the Moabite lionmen, saying, Who will go and bring the king milk that have been got from the dugs of an unblemished lioness in her lair? But not one was found brave enough or daring enough to do this thing, for could any man draw near to a lioness in her lair to squeeze her dugs and escape unharmed?" Just to give some context, this king had some kind of disease or illness, and he needed the milk from a lioness in order to be cured, or that's what his healer had told him. But nobody, was willing to do this, and so with that, I'll continue.
Well, I think before just to, because the second Samuel 23:20 and the first Chronicles 11:2 is a parallel of it.
Right.
It says he slew 2 lion-like men, and he slew a lion. So, like, the author's giving you a clear
differences. Yes.
Like,
and in this story, both of those events happen as well. So, All right, continuing. "And the king saw that his warriors held their peace, and he was exceedingly wroth, and cried out in his anger, Ye tongue-tied hounds, where is your valor? Dare not a man of you venture his life for the king? Then 2 Moabite lion men came forward. Now these were the lions which were over the young lions in the king's army. And they fell down before the king with their faces to the ground, and they said, Bruise us with thy heel, O Lord, O king. Let all our lives be given for the thinnest hair on thy head. I let all our heads be ransomed for thy little fingernail. Do thou but speak the word, and we will ensnare every lion and lioness in the wilderness and bring them to thee. But this other thing which the king commandeth is beyond man's power. None could achieve it. Ask thy wise men, it may be that they can give thee counsel. And so the king inquired of his wise men and his magicians, but neither found he any answer from their mouth, for never before had they chanced upon the like, nor had their fathers declared it unto them. Then the king in his sore plight brought him of his neighbor Solomon, king of Israel, and of his wisdom. He sent him a letter in haste by the hands of his messengers, telling him of all the evil that was come upon him, and of what the physicians had said. And in his letter he besought him, saying, And now, having told thee concerning all this, O king, vouchsafe to act toward me in kindness and faithfulness, according to thy kindliness which my fathers bestowed on thy fathers, when they came to sojourn in the field of Moab in the days of famine, when my fathers received them with compassion and goodwill, and succored them many days. Remember that we are brethren, since thou art seed of the 3rd generation from Ruth the Moabitess, who was of the family of my father's house, and who clave to thy people and thy tribe, as thou knowest. When, therefore, thou hast heard my request, may it be that thou wilt have compassion on me, and not withhold thy counsel and thy help according to the good hand of God upon thee, and according to his wisdom that is within thee. For I know that none is so wise as thou, and that naught is too wonderful for thee. Thus did the king of Moab send to Solomon by the hand of his messengers. Moreover, he sent with them choice products of his country as a present to the king of Judea. After the messengers had left the presence, he arose in his wrath to his counselors and to his captains of his army, and he said, O ye most despicable slaves, this day have ye shamed your king and his throne, so that men will say, there is no counsel and no might in Moab. If therefore the king of Judea shall fulfill my request, I will cast your carcasses to the dogs. Get ye gone out of my sight, and let me not see your faces. And it came to pass that when the letter reached the hand of Solomon, the words of the king of Moab touched his heart, and he summoned the captain of his host, Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, and he showed him the letter and said, Son of Jehoiada, wilt thou go to bring milk from the dugs of the lioness? And the son of Jehoiada answered, For thy glory, O king, and for the glory of the God of Israel. And what wilt thou take with thee? Let 10 kids be given to thy servant. A smile passed over the king's lips, for he understood his warrior's purpose, and he said, I know that thou art a mighty man and a wily warrior, and that naught will turn thee back. Go, and God be with thee. And wheresoever thou goest, let thine eye be alert and thine ear attentive, and thou shalt be saved alive. Then Solomon blessed the captain of his host and sent him away. And Benaiah delayed not, but taking with him 10 goats and his shepherd boy, he arose to go and seek out where a den of lions could be found. Now Benaiah was light and swift on his feet as any hart. His eye was like an eagle's eye, piercing gloom and darkness, and his ear was like a net in the deep sea. The lightest rustle in the farthest distance could not escape it. And Benaiah went on a long journey and came to the borders of Samir and Ermon. They are the mountains where from of old have lurked wild beasts and lions. Now the time was the time of wintry cold, and there was snow in those mountains and in the places round about. And Benaiah sought until he found the tracks of a lion in the snow. He shut up his flock of goats within a crevice of a rock, and forbade the boy to stir from thence until he called him. Then Benaiah followed the tracks of the lion, supposing that he would find the den nearby. As he went up the mountain, he saw, to his confusion, that the tracks of the lion had suddenly changed, and it was marvelous in his sight. While he yet wondered, lo, a mighty roar reached his ears. It was like the roar of a lion, yet it was not the roar of a lion, for it differed from it as by a hair's breadth, and it all seemed to him a great riddle. Suddenly he found out the riddle. Are not these the tracks of the Moabite linemen? And was not that their roar? It can only be that they are come out to seek my life. That it is which the king made known to me when he said, Let thine eye be alert and thine ear attentive. And the spirit of counsel and might took possession of Benaiah, and he knew what he should do. And truly, as Benaiah had thought, so it was. When tidings reached the Moabite lionmen that Benaiah was gone forth to get the milk of a lioness, they were greatly afraid, for they remembered what the king in the hour of his wrath had sworn concerning them. And the 2 Moabite lionmen took counsel together. Now these were the lions which were over the young lions in the king's army, to go out to oppose Benaiah and to lay snares in his path. These Moabite lionmen were an evil an impetuous company, more savage than ravening beasts, and they had long vexed the people of Judea. All of them were huge and fearsome men, heavily accorded in iron and brass. The hair of their heads and their beards were like lions' manes. Lion skins were about their loins, and iron shoes, shaped like lion paws, were on their feet, and in their throats was the roar of a lion. Yet for all this they put no confidence in their strength, for they well knew that there was none so prudent in device and swift in counsel as Benaiah. But this time they thought to match Benaiah in cunning. So they too set out to overtake Benaiah on the journey, to join themselves with him as skilled huntsmen and companions who were to come to his help. But Benaiah had gone his way in secret and had sped like an eagle by hidden and devious paths wherein no foot had ever trod. So the 2 Moabite lionmen gave up their plan and came to the mountains where the wild beasts lurked, well knowing that Benaiah must come thither, and there they lay in wait for him behind a cleft in a rock. Supposing that they could draw Benaiah to their hiding place, they uttered from time to time a roar of a lion to deceive him into following after the roaring, so that he might fall into their hands. But the eyes of Benaiah were opened wide, and he knew that he must act warily. And so soon as he perceived whose were the footprints and the roar, he covered himself quickly with a white sheet which he had made ready for himself from the beginning, that he should not be visible in the snow. He turned back and quickly returned in his tracks to the crevice of the rock where he had left his flock and the boy. Then he sent the boy in front of him to follow in the track of the footprints in the snow until he came to an end. And he taught the lad what he should do and what he should say. So the lad went up to the slope of the mountain, weeping as he went, according to the instruction of Benaiah. And Benaiah stole along, wrapped in the white sheet, not far behind him. When the lad turned to go behind the cleft of a rock, there sprang out.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I'll finish it up when we get back.
I am
It's not that much longer.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures. Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses?
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible.
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world. Sacred Word Revealed
Comes to Atlanta, Georgia.
On September 11th to the 13th, 2020.
Purpose to reveal end time mysteries.
To prepare the final generation,
We must don the full armor of God.
featuring Zen Garcia,
Dr. Joy Pugh,
Rob Skiba,
Gary Wayne,
Yana Ben Noon,
Stephen Benoon,
Dr. Stephen Pigeon,
Justin Garcia,
Laurel Austin.
Nathan Reynolds. Buy your tickets now at sacredwordrevealed.com.
we're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I'm your host, Rob Skiba, for the second hour of the broadcast. As usual, time is flying by. Wow. Right before the break, what was the text that you were reading from, by the way?
As it comes to pass. It's a book of old Solomon, and I believe it's from the Arabic, like a pseudepigraphal or whatever. But it's a text of ancient stories about Solomon and King David.
Okay, you were gonna finish.
Yeah, let me finish this real quick, and then we can move on. When the lad turned to go behind the cleft of a rock, there sprang out upon him suddenly the two Moabite lion men who had been lying in wait. Who art thou, boy, and why comest thou hither? Still weeping and with teeth chattering, the lad answered, Alas, my lord, I am one of the lads which mind our master's flock, and I have lost a lamb, and am come to seek for it in the mountains, if perchance I may find it. But I fear greatly by reason of the lions, for there are many of them in this place. But one of them that lay in wait suddenly seized him, for his suspicion was awakened, and he shook him to and fro, and roared furiously, And who is thy master, thou son of a dog, and where is he now? Behind thee, answered a voice from behind him, and through the neck of the lion man who held the lad was thrust a heavy spear, and it stopped his mouth. Before the other lion man could turn round to see whence came the evil, behold, a shining sword in his head was split like a pumpkin. The voice was the voice of Benaiah. His was the spear, and his was the sword. He had followed closely after the lad, ready to avenge himself on those who had sought his life and who had vexed his people. And there fell on that day 2 of the Moabite lion men, wallowing in their blood in the snow, and Benaiah cast their 2 carcasses into a pit. As he turned to go away, he looked, and behold, a lion leaping along, coming down towards the pit, drawn by the smell of blood. Benaiah went down after it into the pit and slew it, and added its carcass to the carcasses of the 2 Moabite lion men. For he said, Let it not be hindrance to me when I go to the lioness in her lair. All right, I won't read the rest of the story, but I'll read the one passage about the from Maccabees 4 about the tortures that were done.
First Maccabees 4?
Yeah, this is 4th Maccabees.
Oh, 4th Maccabees.
Yeah, about the martyrdom of the high priest Eleazar and his 7 sons and his wife.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, but it says this, and I'll tell you the passage when I get to the end. Before torturing him, they inquired if he were willing to eat, and they heard this noble decision. These leopard-like beasts tore out his sinews with their iron hands, flayed all his flesh up to his chin, and tore away his scalp. But he steadfastly endured this agony and said, How sweet is any kind of death for the religion of our fathers. To the tyrant, he said, Do you not think, you most savage tyrant, that you are being tortured more than I, as you see the arrogant design of your tyranny being defeated by our endurance for the sake of religion? I lighten my pain by the joys that come from virtue, but you suffer torture by the threats that come from impiety. You will not escape, most abominable tyrant, the judgments of the divine wrath. And this is 4th Maccabees chapter 9, verses 27 to 32. And so we see that, it is because the rest of the story before, the king of Moab, after receiving the milk from the lioness that Benaiah was able to get for him, he was healed, and he disbanded the lion men of Moab. And so they then began, according to the Maccabees 4, to work for Antiochus Epiphanes the 4th, and became king's guard for them. And they were the ones that performed the torture on the Israelites when they were trying to get them to eat food sacrificed unto idols. And the reason he started with the high priest is because he thought if he could get the high priest to do it, then the rest would follow suit.
Wow.
Pretty crazy. But yeah, confirming witness to what we were talking about.
Man, it's definitely crazy. So my understanding is the Moabites are the result of Lot's daughters.
Right.
Had sex with him after Lot's wife was turned to a pillar of salt, and this is actually, I was just writing about this in the PowerPoint presentation today, because my thinking was, why would Ham mess with his mother in the first place? What would be the reason for it? And look, I admit it's speculation right here, but my thought process on it was, if in fact he had offspring that were manifested as Nephilim, and I suspect with 6 fingers and 6 toes, because why would I say that? Well, because the offspring of the Canaanites, many of them are described as having 6 fingers and 6 toes. So if that was a genetic trait of the Canaanites, then it makes sense that Canaan himself may have had those traits. And if he did, then, Ham would have been like, okay, well, this stinks. He's looking at his wife, he's looking at his child, and he's got a hybrid, and he's like, crap. And if he looked at his brother's wives, well, they were sisters. So, he'd be thinking, well, that's not going to work either. And so then the only viable, normal woman left on earth at that time would have been his mother. And so, I was just I was trying to think through what his thought process might have been as to why he did it. I don't just automatically assume, okay, pervert, he's just being a pervert. Rather, I'm thinking there was probably, at least in his mind, a cause, a logic to it, like why he was doing it. And what I was using for the justification of that theory is the same logic that the daughters of Lot had when, they're watching their world around them being destroyed. I mean, their whole life was Sodom and Gomorrah, and when fire is literally raining down from heaven, and they were aware that the earth is going to be destroyed twice, once by water and once by fire.
Right, yeah.
Not too far removed from the water judgment. That wasn't too long ago. Then they could have been thinking, okay, this is the fire judgment. I mean, Adam told us about this, right? That there was going to be a fire judgment, and they're seeing fire raining down from heaven, destroying their former dwelling place. And, I think it's reasonable speculation that to suggest that they probably thought, oh, this is the end of the world, and Dad's the only. We're the only.
Absolutely.
We're the only. Dad's the only man. Let's get Dad drunk and get jiggy with it, so we can, repopulate the earth.
Yeah.
And so, that being the case, the Moabites were the offspring of that union. So my question then becomes, well, why are they called lion men of Moab? Is Moab simply the region, as in a geographic location, or is this a genetic tie to the Moabite people? Which I don't see. Ruth, or plenty of other people are normal.
Right.
They're normal humans. So I don't want to. I don't think there's any justification for painting a broad stroke over the entire Moabite people as hybrids. But it does beg the question, what's the deal with these lion men?
Right, yeah.
And why take the lion men of Moab specifically, and not just, lion men? Like, what is have you given any thought to that or read anything in the regard, like why are they associated with Moab?
No, other than they were in service to the king of Moab, and whether they, were from that region or just because they were in service to the king. But I can understand your points of view as to whether there was some kind of weird anomaly associated with that particular tribe that led to, some kind of lion men. Just like, long time ago we read the story of those the dog-headed people, and that was even recent. I mean, a few hundred years back. And this is found all over in different traditions and mythologies, and even in the sainthood of some particular, I forget the name of the saint, but he was said to have been dog-headed. So I can't remember his name either, but I do remember actually seeing that when that's for those of you listening to this right now, just go look up the Dogmen.
And yeah, there was a Catholic dogman who was actually made a saint by the Catholic Church. I mean, it's so bizarre, and like you point out, that wasn't that long ago,
Right? Not at all.
Talk about 400 years ago or something. I mean, it wasn't terribly long ago.
And they were able to communicate and talk with other humans and other tribes, and so, but they had dog heads.
Man, that's just
bizarre. Yeah,
it really is bizarre. In my lecture, I did a whole section on the cone heads, the cone head skulls.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know what L.A. Marzulli's feelings are towards me anymore. We used to be cordial and friendly. We had a friendly rivalry as it pertains to the multiple incursion thesis. And then when I started getting banned from conferences, he started taking regular pot shots at me from the stage.
Really?
Oh, and I wasn't able to defend myself.
That's totally not right.
Well, just taking pot shots at my theory about how the
okay.
Because he's a second incursion guy, so he's really trying to push the second incursion thing, and at the expense of what I've known for teaching. He always made fun of it from the stage, but in places where I was never there to defend myself. So we've had sort of that, I would say, friendly, sometimes intense, but friendly rivalry in that regard. But there can be no question, the dude has done some really great research on the conehead skulls, the skulls of Peru and stuff, and a lot of other stuff. I mean, his whole Trail of the Nephilim series that he's done. I mean, I respect him as boots on the ground. So many people, we just read about these things and we comment on these things based on stuff that we're reading, but he's out there,
right? He's done a lot of traveling,
doing the traveling, going out there, taking the pictures, handling the stuff, holding it, getting DNA tests done. He's done a lot of good work on that stuff. And so I was including some videos for a couple of conferences that he spoke at, where he was giving some of the evidence and showing, I mean, the skulls, I mean, there are skulls that are clearly cranial headboarding that parents at the child's young age strap boards to the kid's head to change the shape of it. And that otherwise the skull is completely normal. It's just been misshapen by these boards. And yet you have to ask, well, why are they doing that? What possesses parents to, hey, let's strap boards to my kid's head, that they're trying to emulate something that is real, that was born that way. And in the Enigma of Cranial Deformation by Childress and Forster, they talk about a case where they had found I don't know if they found it, but somebody had found the mummified remains of a pregnant woman. And when they opened her up and they saw that there was a 7-month-old fetus that had a cone head, so, and the drawing of this thing, when you look at the drawing that they made of it, I mean, it looks like something right out of the movie Aliens. So there were people that and their whole suture pattern of their skull is, it's not just the shape of their skull, but also the suture patterns are different. Sometimes they have as much as 40% larger cranial capacity, and they would do like, it's like a sand test where you take like beach sand and you fill up a skull and then you pour it back out to see the volume, like how much sand was in it, and compared to a comparable size normal human skull. Some of these skulls are, anywhere from 20 to 40% larger interior cranial capacity. So
that's a big difference.
That's pretty massive. I mean, that's huge. And so he thinks, of course, that it's evidence of multiple incursions. Angels keep coming back. I'm like, no, I don't see that. I see it's evidence of genetic tampering, genetic manipulation, and these features may be the result of some kind of blending with animals. I mean, look at a gorilla's head, and my thinking is, if man was created perfect in the image and likeness of God, just as Genesis says, then the anomalous stuff that we see, and not all of the skeletal proofs that evolution props up as evidence, is fraudulent. I mean, there certainly has been quite a bit of fraudulent skeletal, things that have been put forward as proof of evolution and missing link that have been proven to be fraudulent.
Right.
But there are other skeletal things that haven't been proven to be fraudulent, and they hold them up as proof of evolution. But I'm saying no, this is proof of hybridization. That, I mean, various different skull shapes and stuff like that can be the result of hybridization, blending with animals that we see clearly described in Joshua and Jubilees, and I believe that's what Genesis is referring to in Genesis 6:12. So, I mean, if we do have these, I mean, you could go to Peru from what LA says. I mean, you could just go there and walk around and kick some dirt up and find a skull. I mean, like that's how prevalent that he makes it sound like. They're like everywhere. So what are these people? And I mean, some of them, not just the shape of their skull, but the shape of their eye sockets are, in some cases like really large or different from what a normal human skull eye socket would look like. And so you start to think, well, I wonder if anybody has found anything that could be a lion man of Moab.
Right.
And what would that look like? And I think that the problem with some of that would be, with the dogmen or even the linemen or something like that, is if you found the skeletal remains of what looked like a lion head next to what looked like a human body, the temptation would be, well, it looks like a lion killed this person.
Right. The mix-up.
Especially
if you're not
them,
used to seeing, what you found. Unless it was like completely attached, like.
Right.
They found here, I think it was in Pennsylvania, the skulls that had the horns with them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So have you? I didn't look a lot into that. I mean, I'm aware of it. I've seen pictures of it. Have you seen anything that would vet that this is authentic? Or I mean, there's so many frauds out there and Photoshops and stuff like that. From what I have seen, it looks like it's authentic. But have you?
It seems to be. I mean, I don't know with 100%, but the individual did take a photo before the skulls, of course, disappeared. But there were 2 instances where sets of skulls were found with horns, just like what appeared in that particular photograph. And so, that photograph is said to be authentic. And then there was also another discovery, and I can't remember exactly where, but the guy Jim Vieira, the Vieira brothers that wrote all the books on the giants, and they talk about that because they pull up all those articles from hundreds of years ago which verify these different accountings, and they share those stories which were said to be published in these old town papers and back in the 1800s or whenever it was, and after the discovery was made, and then of course everything disappears in the Smithsonian. But
right, well, that's the thing. I'm becoming, especially with this whole mud fossil deal, really coming to believe that something happened probably somewhere towards the end of the 1700s, early 1800s. Something happened worldwide. And I'm really skeptical of the historical narrative that we've been fed.
Right.
And that, you don't have to go that far back in time for things to start getting really weird from the normal narrative.
Especially. I was just going to say, especially when you look at the maps, which. Yeah,
that's to say.
Yeah, because you have the Great Lakes appearing between what is the 1600 and the 1800s, and they weren't before on those maps. And then also the
California.
California is an island off of the disconnected and separated from the continental United States, and so those kind of things changes, huge changes, and it makes you wonder with those Great Lakes. If perhaps, the whole thing with the Grand Canyon, and if a lot of that also took place in that time.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, the standard creationist line regarding the Grand Canyon is like, look, that could have happened very fast. And
right, exactly. Yeah.
St. Helens, blew, we have tangible, observable evidence right in front of our face that we can see, miniature Grand Canyon that was carved out very quickly from that one volcanic explosion, And so the whole idea that the Colorado River, over millions of years carved that is just completely ridiculous. So, I mean, we could see how things can happen extremely fast to disrupt things geologically speaking.
Right.
But when we think biologically, and like the book Mysteries of the Solomon Island Mysteries.
Oh yeah, love that.
That's really trippy, man, because it's making for great information for me to base seed on and do stuff with the Seed Project. But realizing that was documented, I think it was in the 90s.
Yeah, not long ago at all.
Yeah, very recently. Wow, I mean, there's just so much that is different from the mainstream narrative, even to the point of looking to the death of Meriwether Lewis, of Lewis and fame, and the formation and creation of the Smithsonian. How it was actually the guy who founded it doesn't even live in the United States, or didn't. He was from Europe. It seems to me that organization was specifically designed to be an organization to hide the truth.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt.
They do show a lot of truth, but then they also hide a lot of it.
Right.
The stuff that conflicts with the evolutionary.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah, it reminds me of just like, everybody gives precedence to the United Nations for handling international affairs, and they deserve no such reputation,
Yeah. I don't know what the life to come is going to be like, but I hope that there's some kind of a movie theater that we can go to and check out heaven's view of history to get the real story.
Right.
If we experience time in the life to come the same way we experience time now, I could easily spend 6,000 years of time just looking at world history.
Catching up. Absolutely. And why wouldn't you want to know,
Yeah, like to see what it was really like out there, because the more we dig into various texts, whether it be cosmology or human animal hybridization, or mud floods and whatever. I mean, man, the Rockefeller, the Rockefeller education history that we have is it's a joke.
Right, it is. Yeah, and it's really to keep people dumbed down and bored out of their minds so that they don't care about learning.
Yeah. Well,
unfortunately,
that doesn't fit us.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, I just, I really, when I think about some of the things that they're trying to do with the vaccinations with the implants and the nanotechnology, of course, all of the red flags go up, right? I mean, we're talking mark of the beast level type of stuff, but yeah, at the same time, I'm going, man, but I sure wish the Matrix plug a cable in the back of your head thing could really work. Because I have like this huge, just even the books that you've sent me, just your books alone.
Oh, right. Yeah, no.
Am I ever going to get to a chance to read all these books? And that's just one shelf, all the books that you've sent me. And I don't even know how many other shelves of books that I have, many of which I've read, but a whole lot more that I haven't, that I just kind of use as go-to quick reference to through it and find a quote for something I need. But, I do wish that I could just kind of put the book up to my head and get a download.
Yeah, and know all the information quickly. Yeah, that would be awesome.
That would be cool. Well, wow, we got 2 minutes already before the next break. So when we come back from the break, I will definitely jump into at least read Jubilees chapter 7. But was there anything that you wanted to comment on from Genesis 9, anything that stood out to you that we haven't talked about already?
Well, if at some point, whenever we get to it, I pulled up from the Legends of the Jews that commentary that talks about this story, and I can read from it, but we might not get to it. Maybe we'll have some time in the next segment, but it's not that long. But it does talk about some of the stuff we were covering. So
does it address the issue of Canaan and what was happening there, or?
It does mention some about that, yeah, and then it goes in, to the whole story of the nakedness of the father before getting to the descendants stuff. And it brings it from a strangely different perspective, because just in one portion it talks about how, like this weird sentence, he added to this sin of irreverence the still greater outrage of attempting to perform an operation on his father designed to prevent procreation. So yeah,
Whoa.
a little bit different story here.
Well, but see, like I said earlier, I mean, reading it's one thing, but hearing it, I was like, it doesn't sound like he's messing with his mom.
Mm-hmm.
It does sound like he's messing with his dad. And if it, okay, we'll start off with that. We got about 20 seconds before we go to break, so I can't leave that dangling out there. We'll have to, pardon the pun. So yeah, we'll have you read that when we come back from the break.
Sounds good.
And see what the deal is with that.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures. Everyday questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses?
Which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible.
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world. Sacred Word Revealed
Comes to Atlanta, Georgia.
On September 11th to the 13th, 2020.
Purpose to reveal end time mysteries.
To prepare the final generation,
We must don the full armor of God.
featuring Zen Garcia,
Dr. Joy Pugh,
Rob Skiba,
Gary Wayne,
Yana Ben Noon,
Stephen Benoon,
Dr. Stephen Pigeon,
Justin Garcia,
Laurel Austin,
Nathan Reynolds. Buy your tickets now at sacredwordrevealed.com.
That whole episode. In his drunken condition, Noah betook himself to the tent of his wife. His son Ham saw him there, and he told his brothers what he had noticed, and said, "The first man had but 2 sons, and one slew the other. This man Noah has 3 sons, yet he desires to beget a 4th. Hold on. Besides, nor did Ham rest satisfied with these disrespectful words against his outrage of attempting to perform of his father against his father. He added to this sin of irreverence the still greater outrage of attempting to perform an operation upon his father designed to prevent procreation. When Noah awoke from his wine and became sober, he pronounced a curse upon Ham in the presence of his youngest son Canaan, which, that goes to what you were saying, that Canaan was present. To Ham himself he could do no harm, for God had conferred a blessing upon Noah and his 3 sons as they departed from the ark. Therefore he put the curse upon the last-born son of the son that had prevented him from begetting a younger son than the 3 he had. The descendants of Ham through Canaan therefore have red eyes, because Ham looked upon the nakedness of his father. They have misshapen lips, because Ham spoke with his lips to his brothers about the unseemly condition of his father. They have twisted curly hair, because Ham turned and twisted his head round to see the nakedness of his father. And they go about naked, because Ham did not cover the nakedness of his father. Thus he was required, for it is the way of God to mete out punishment, measure for measure. Canaan had to suffer vicariously for his father's sin, yet some of the punishment was inflicted upon him on his own account, for it had been Canaan who had drawn the attention of Ham to Noah's revolting condition. Ham, it appears, was but the worthy father of such a son. The last will and testament of Canaan addressed to his children read as follows: "Speak not the truth, hold not yourselves aloof from theft, lead a dissolute life, hate your master with an exceeding great hate, and love one another." As Ham was made to suffer requital for his irreverence, so Shem and Japheth received a reward for the filial differential way in which they took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders, and walking backward with averted faces covered the nakedness of their father. Naked, the descendants of Ham, the Egyptians and Ethiopians, were led away captive and into exile by the king of Assyria, while the descendants of Shem, the Assyrians, even when the angel of the Lord burnt them in the camp, were not exposed. Their garments remained upon their corpses unsinged. And in the time to come, when Gog shall suffer his defeat, God will provide both shrouds and a place of burial for him and all his multitude, the posterity of Japheth. Though Shem and Japheth both showed themselves to be dutiful and deferential, yet it was Shem who deserved the larger need of praise. He was the first to set about covering his father. Japheth joined him after the good deed had been begun. Therefore the descendants of Shem received as their special reward the talit, the garment worn by them, while the Japhethites have only the toga. A further distinction accorded to Shem was the mention of his name in connection with God's in the blessing of Noah. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem. He said, though as a rule of the name of God is not joined to the name of a living person, only to the name of one who has departed this life. The relation of Shem to Japheth was expressed in the blessing their father pronounced upon them. God will grant a land of beauty to Japheth, and his sons will be proselytes dwelling in the academies of Shem. At the same time, Noah conveyed by his words that the Shekinah would dwell only in the first temple erected by Solomon, a son of Shem, and not in the second temple, the builder of which would be Cyrus, the descendant of Japheth. And that's where it stops.
Well, that puts a whole other spin on it.
Yeah, a lot different.
Huh. Wow. So the motivation was he was afraid that there would be a fourth son that would somehow usurp him or somehow cause a problem for the three existing children of Noah?
I'm not exactly sure, but the motive was to prevent his father from having a fourth son, which he somehow did. And that's why the descendant. And as you were saying, because I had always thought, that Canaan was the result of the nakedness of Ham seeing the nakedness of his father. But in this story, Canaan is already present while this is happening. And it even says that it was Canaan who points it out to Ham that Noah was drunken in his tent. And so that's when Ham took advantage, according to this story anyways.
Yeah, I'd heard, I don't know if I had heard that specific story, but I had heard something or read something somewhere else that it was Canaan that kind of pointed it out to his dad that something was going on. But I'd always, my whole thing is like, he had to be there for Noah to curse him, it's my belief that, if we are looking at sort of a repeat of what happened, or not a repeat, but a setup similar to what happened with Lot and his daughters, if it was that same type of thing that Ham was engaged in, that then the offspring of that was put. And the reason I said that was because there's, Canaan's loaded with giants. I mean, we know that.
Right, yeah.
That, without saying, there's giants all over Canaan. Mitzrayim has giants too. And the two most prominently mentioned giant groups that we see in Scripture are the Amorites and the Philistines. I forget what the number is, something like 80 times or 200 times that these are. I forget what it was. I looked that up a long time ago, but quite a number of that specific breed or family of giants, or the Amorites and the Philistines. And the Amorites come from Canaan, and the Philistines come from Caphtor, son of Mitzrayim. And we also have plenty of Egyptian hieroglyphic, representations of giants among the Egyptians.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, well, there's two children of Ham that have plenty of giants, and Cush doesn't have any natural-born giants that I could find anywhere. We see that Nimrod did something to himself to become a giant, but we see that Cush at least had the personality bent towards rebellion or evil, because he names his kid "We shall rebel." I mean, you have a child and you name your child "We shall rebel." Okay, something's going on there. The only one that I couldn't find any problem with, I didn't find any giants and I didn't see any evidence of rebellion, was Put. Put becomes the ancestor of the Libyans, Libya. So, and his name means afflicted, I believe. So it was my assumption then, if Ham did in fact, if the uncovering of his father's nakedness had something to do with his mother, Noah's wife, then she was normal, so there would be normal offspring, not giant offspring. Because if Canaan was the offspring of the union with his mother, how did they end up with giants? Noah's wife would have been pure in my mind. Unless we're dealing with a situation with, a different wife. But even in the theory that you were talking about, that there's two Natmas, I don't believe that it was Cain. Even if that was true, I don't believe it would have been Cain's Naamah that ended up on the ark. It would have been Enoch's Naamah that made it on the ark, in my opinion, if we go that route. So, my whole thinking was, of the offspring of Ham, the only one that seemed 100% normal with no issues was Put. And his name means affliction, which a lot of times, if you're dealing with a situation of incest, you might have some kind of physical problems.
Yeah, with regard to as far as the wife on the ark, Shem and Japheth being the elder, if Ham is from a different mother and their Shem and Japheth's mother had passed away, then it would have been his mother that would have been on the ark. And of course, this is all speculation. I'm only going by what is recorded in both the Book of Jasher and the writings of Abraham, where the Nama, the seed of Cain, the sister of Tubal Cain, is said to, but to have been his mother. But with regard as to whether she made it on the ark or not, and if that was who he slept with the nakedness of the father, I mean, it's all really speculation.
Yeah, well, if you look at the timeline again, you put it out on a timeline chart. If that's the Natma of Cain's line, she well outlived Methuselah by several hundred years. Methuselah lived 969, and he's reckoned to be the oldest that ever lived.
Right.
She's well into the teens. It was something like 12 or 1300 years old by the time of the flood. I don't know. I mean, it's really interesting stuff, and all we can do is just keep looking at ancient texts and see what we can piece together.
Yeah, exactly. It's like trying to solve a crime.
It is. It's funny because we've recently been. Well, we were watching the reboot of Hawaii Five-0. The old show Hawaii Five-0, and then they redid it.
Yeah.
We just finished. It was like 10 seasons worth of it.
Oh wow.
Yeah. That was a long-running show. I think, and the only reason I think it ended is because of this COVID thing. But although it did look like they ended the series like they intended to end it, like it wasn't just off because of COVID. But at any rate, to say that, and now we're watching Magnum PI, the reboot of that, and both of those are crime-solving shows. So we're always trying to figure out who done it.
Yes.
Because. Any kind of good storytelling, they'll introduce the characters, and you just got to figure out who did it.
Right.
And more often than not, it's the subtle character that you don't think is playing a part in it ends up being the one who really did it.
Mm-hmm.
So but throughout the episode, you're trying to find evidence and piece together the puzzle to figure out what's the big picture here.
Right.
And that's the way I very much see that we're doing. We're like the
absolutely.
CSI kind of thing on solve this. But okay, I got 14 minutes here before we go to break. I might be able to get through this.
I think so.
Give it a shot. Jubilees chapter 7. And in the 7th week, in the first year thereof, in this Jubilee, Noah planted vines on the mountain on which the ark had rested, named Lubar, one of the Ararat mountains, and they produced fruit in the 4th year. And he guarded their fruit and gathered it in this year in the 7th month. So this is some time after the flood. By this is 4 years after the flood that he's planting this vineyard here. And he made wine therefrom and put it into a vessel and kept it until the 5th year, until the first day on the new moon of the 1st month. So now we're 5 years at least after the flood. And he celebrated with joy the day of this feast, and he made a burnt sacrifice unto the Lord, 1 young ox and 1 ram and 7 sheep, each a year old, and a kid of the goats, that he might make atonement thereby for himself and his sons. I'm wondering if this is a Day of Atonement kind of time frame. And he prepared the kid first and placed some of its blood on the flesh that was on the altar which he had made, and all the fat he laid on the altar where he made the burnt sacrifice, and the ox and the ram and the sheep, and he laid all their flesh upon the altar. And he placed all their offerings mingled with oil upon it, and afterwards he sprinkled wine on the fire, and which he had previously made on the altar. And he placed incense on the altar and caused a sweet savor to ascend acceptable before the Lord his God. And he rejoiced and drank of this wine, he and his children with joy. So they were drinking too. And it was evening, and he went into his tent, and being drunk, he lay down and slept, and was uncovered in his tent as he slept. And Ham saw Noah his father naked, and went forth and told his 2 brethren without. And Shem took his garment and arose, he and Japheth, and they placed the garment on their shoulders and went backward and covered the shame of their father, and their faces were backward. And Noah awoke from his sleep and knew all that his younger son had done unto him. And he cursed his son and said, Cursed be Canaan, and enslaved servant shall he be unto his brethren. And he blessed Shem and said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And God enlarged Japheth, and God shall enlarge Japheth, and God shall dwell in the midst of Shem. and Canaan shall be his servant. And Ham knew that his father had cursed his younger son, and he was displeased that he had cursed his son, and he parted from his father, he and his sons with him, Cush and Mitzrayim, and Put and Canaan. And so this shows Put there too. So, yeah, I mean, it really doesn't sound like he's doing anything with his mother here. And he built for himself a city and called its name after the name of his wife. Oh boy, Mauka.
Good job.
Yeah. Good luck with that one.
Yeah.
Makalaka shakalaka. Oh boy. And Japheth saw it and became envious of his brother, and he too built for himself a city, and he called its name after the name of his wife, Taneses or something like that. And Shem dwelt with his father Noah, and he built a city close to his father on the mountain, and he too called its name after the name of his wife. Oh boy, Sedequetelelabab something.
Glad you got this one.
Yeah, whatever. Man. And behold, these three cities are near Mount Lubar, the Seba Laka Waka Waka fronting the mountain on its east, and the Nela Waka Waka on the south, and the Adawaka Waka Waka toward the west. And these are the sons of Shem, Elam and Asher, and Arphaxad, his son, was born 2 years after the flood, and Lud and Aram. The sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog, and Madai and Javan, Tubal and Meshach and Tiras. These are the sons of These are the sons of Noah. That's interesting. The sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog and Madai and Javan, Tubal and Meshach and Tiras. These are the sons of Noah. I think it's just meaning to summarize what the sons of Noah did there. Doesn't sound like he's having more children. And in the 8th Jubilee, Noah began to enjoin upon his sons, looks like a typo here, the ordinances and commandments and all the judgments that he knew. And he exhorted his sons to observe righteousness and to cover the shame of their flesh and to bless their Creator and honor father and mother, I'm assuming, and love their neighbor and guard their souls from fornication and uncleanness and all iniquity. For owing to these three things came the flood upon the earth, namely, owing to the fornication wherein the watchers, against the law of their ordinances, went a-whoring after the daughters of men, and took themselves wives of all which they chose, and they made the beginning of uncleanness. And they begat sons, the Nephilim, and they were all unalike, and they devoured one another. And the giant slew the Nephil, and the Nephil slew the Eljo, and the Eljo mankind, and one man another. And every one sold himself to work iniquity, and to shed much blood, and the earth was filled with iniquity. And after this is still in a pre-flood context. I maintain that Jubilee 724, the after this of Jubilee 724, is exactly the same as the after that of Genesis 6:4. If you just pair them up together, it's still in a pre-flood context. So he's describing angels mating with women, the offspring and the violence that ensued because of that. And after this, it's still in the pre-flood context, they sinned against the beasts and the birds and all that moves and walks on the earth, and much blood was shed on the earth, and every imagination and desire of men imagined vanity and evil continually. This is perfectly paralleled with Genesis chapter 6. And the Lord destroyed everything from off the face of the earth because of the wickedness of their deeds, and because of the blood which they had shed in the midst of the earth. He destroyed everything. And we were left, and I and you, my sons, and everything that entered with us into the ark. And behold, I see your works before me, that you do not walk in righteousness, for in the path of destruction ye have begun to walk, and ye are parting one from another, and are envious one of another. And so it comes that ye are not in harmony, my sons, each with his brother. For I see, and behold, the demons have begun their seductions against you and against your children. And now I fear on your behalf that after my death ye will shed the blood of men upon the earth, and that ye too will be destroyed from the face of the earth. For whoso sheddeth man's blood, and whoso eateth the blood of any flesh, shall be destroyed from the earth, and shall not be left, and there shall not be left any man that eateth blood, or that sheddeth the blood of man on the earth, nor shall there be left to him any seed or descendants living under heaven. For unto Sheol shall they go, and unto the place of condemnation shall they descend, and unto the darkness of the deep shall they be removed by a violent death. There shall be no blood seen upon you. Of all the blood there shall be all the days in which ye have killed any beast or cattle or whatever flies upon the earth, and work ye a good work to your souls by covering that which has been shed on the face of the earth. And ye shall not be like him who eats with blood, but guard yourself that none may eat blood before you. Cover the blood, for thus have I been commanded to testify to you and your children together with all flesh. And suffer not the soul to be eaten with the flesh, that your blood, which is your life, may not be required at the hand of any flesh that sheds it on the earth. For the earth will not be clean from the blood which has been shed upon it, and only through the blood of him that shed it will the earth be justified throughout all generations. And now, my children, hearken, work judgment and righteousness, that ye may be planted in righteousness over the face of the whole earth, and your glory lifted up before my God, who saved me from the waters of the flood. And behold, you will go and build for yourself cities, and plant in them all the plants that are upon the earth, and moreover all fruit-bearing trees. For 3 years the fruit of everything that is eaten will not be gathered, and in the 4th year its fruit will be accounted holy, and they will offer the first fruits acceptable before the Most High God, who created heaven and earth and all things. Scroll up here. Let them offer in abundance the first of the wine and oil as first fruits on the altar of the Lord who receives it, and what is left let the servants of the house of the Lord eat before the altar which receives it. And in the 5th year make ye the release, so that ye release it in righteousness and uprightness, and ye shall be righteous, and all that you plant shall prosper. Thus did Enoch, the father of your father, command Methuselah his son, and Methuselah his son Lamech, and Lamech commanded me all the things which his fathers commanded him. And I also will give you commandment, my sons, as Enoch commanded his sons in the first Jubilees, while still living. The 7th in his generation he commanded and testified to his sons and to his sons' sons until the day of his death. Wow, lots of stuff there 3 minutes before break, before the end of the show, actually.
You made it.
Yeah, we made it. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting as far as the fruit, and I thought it was really cool too that they, on the 4th year, when they do take the fruit, that they offer first to the Most High, and that's in similarity to the whole feast of first fruits, where the high priest takes the barley sheaf and as a wave offering for the sin of Israel, and then after they do that, then they begin to even consume of the new harvest. But until that time, they eat of what is the old harvest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When the Israelites came into the land, they had to do the same thing, like with the fruit and the plants and stuff. When they began to possess the land of Canaan, though, I was looking at that as something possibly different going on there. Is that I was going down the path of the sins of the fathers are visited up to the 3rd and 4th generation. And that we see that there was the 4th generation of the Canaanites in the land when they came into there, and that they encounter hybrid food, and so my thinking was that even the food itself, the plants itself, they had to be cleansed through the 4-year deal, just like the people.
Yeah, that would make sense to me.
Yeah, and this passage that we just read here in Jubilees, that's where we get a bunch of different names, different classes of the giants there. Mm-hmm. The immediate offspring of the angels appears to be the Nephilim, and they all unalike, and they've devoured one another. And that goes along with the judgment. It's like they were to kill each other off.
Right. So that's what we read in the book of Enoch as well.
Yeah, Enoch, that's part of the severe judgment, was the parents had their children.
Yeah, and the angels would set them against each other.
And they were literally eating each other. I mean, that's pretty hard.
Right, yeah.
And the giants, I wonder, I mean, if that's a reference to the Nephilim or if it's another class. And they're killing the Nephil, and the Nephil are killing the Eljo, mankind. So this is like multi-tiered down. And I was trying to draw parallels in other ancient cultures, like you had the Titans and then the Olympians and then the demigods below that. Like many different ancient cultures had multi-tiered levels of gods.
Right.
And I was trying to, pair them up with the Hebrew account, but it looks like we get more here than I did, and most of the others was like 2 or 3 tiers.
Yeah, I wonder if these titles are found in that book of the proper names in the dictionary.
I doubt it because they're not actually that covering
the Bible
in the canonized text. But
yeah.
Well, that's it, man. We got a few minutes for the end of here.
Good show, man.
Yeah, thanks, and we'll continue this next week on your show.
All right, sounds good. Be blessed, everyone. Good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you for.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you, and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.